You caught me? Yes, you did. Hi, Kimono. Could you let me know how the audio is? Yippee! Voice cracks. Disgusting. Sounds good? Alright. Perfect. You've been editing today? Let's go. Exciting, exciting. I have, what, like, two more main drawings to do, I think? And then maybe a couple, like, small edits. So, we're getting close. Let's go. I'm good. I'm a little sleepy, but that's normal. Yeah, my siblings are coming back today, so stream might be a little shorter than usual, but that's okay. Otherwise, I'm doing good. I feel about the same as yesterday in terms of sickness, though. So, I hope no coughing fit, please. My relatives gathered at the Sonozaki house after the festival to have a little party. I mingled with my uncles and had fun. I was trying to get rid of my eerie memories of the ritual storehouse. Siblings, bleh. There's a lot of them, for sure. But yeah, they've been away for 4 days, so I had my time alone. I wish I could have streamed more, but alas, so many parties. Mion was acting as the successor, so I tried to stay away from her. I'm sure she would feel weird if I talked to her in a formal way. In consideration of the hag's old age, we ended the party around 11 p.m. We all helped to clean up, with the women washing the dishes in the kitchen, and the men folding the tables and putting them away in the storeroom. It only took about 30 minutes. Then everyone left one after another. By then, Mion was no longer acting as the Sonozaki's successor and was back to being her normal self. Maybe I overexerted a little. I was lying on the tatami floor. Kasai asked me if I could get in the car, so I told him I'd rather not move anymore. Sis, can I spend the night here? I just want to sleep. Granny will get mad if she finds you. By the way, don't you have school tomorrow, Shion? No, tomorrow's our school's anniversary, so there's no class. How many times a year does your school have its anniversary? Oh well. Okay, Kasai-san. She can stay here tonight. Understood. Good night. Come on, Shion, wake up. Granny will get really mad if you fall asleep here. Here, hold on to me. You can sleep in my room. You what? Sis. My alter ego told me that I'm in a demon's stomach. I wouldn't have woken up if I hadn't heard that voice. But when I stop, he always walks one extra step. I might not have woken up at all. Notebook page 165. What does that mean? I didn't remember much after that. I was probably brought to Mion's room and immediately crawled into the futon. After a while, Mion got her futon ready next to me, turned the lights off, and went to sleep. At least, that's what I thought. I got up and turned the lights on. Mion's futon was empty. The futon felt cold. Mion must have left it a while ago. Did she go to the bathroom? No. The closest bathroom was right there down the hallway. The light in the bathroom was off. Where did she go? The ticking of the clock was loud and annoying in this silence. The hands pointed to a little before 3 a.m. I was left alone all of a sudden, in this late night. I felt the eeriness of the ritual storehouse coming back to me, after almost managing to forget it in the ruckus earlier. I tried to sense my surroundings. In this house, there shouldn't be an eerie atmosphere, strange noises, or footsteps. I stepped out into the freezing cold hallway to look for Mion. When I did, I immediately noticed a light coming from one of the nearby rooms. That room belonged to the hag. The hag went to sleep early and woke up early. She was very strict about her bedtime, so it was strange to see her light on in the middle of the night. I could hear voices, too. Those voices belonged to the hag and Mion. I creeped up to the room and listened to their conversation. Since it was the middle of the night, I could hear their words very clearly. But you know, those young ones went too far. You're right. They made Oyashiro-sama angry, so I guess they got what they deserved. Mion's voice sounded as cold as the one I'd heard down in the torture room. I held my breath. No! Gosh dang it. The police say they are investigating, but are you sure? I guess. It's probably Takano-san. My heart almost stopped. Oyashiro-sama got angry. The police are investigating. It's probably Takano-san. And what day was it today? Those words told me something was happening. My teeth started to chatter. I desperately tried to stop them. Renary held her breath and almost immediately started coughing and gave herself away. I've been caught. I'm the next victim. It's me. I felt like my body was swelling up suddenly. I could no longer hear as well. Calm down. Breathe. Listen more carefully. According to Mion and the hag's conversation, another incident definitely took place. The victims were Takano-san and Tomitake-san. From what I could tell, both Mion and the hag thought it made sense that whatever it was happened to them. No. I needed to think more calmly. They did say they deserved it for making Oyashiro-sama angry. Did they say Takano-san and Tomitake-san made Oyashiro-sama angry? How did they make Oyashiro-sama angry? They knew. My body started to shake. They knew we snuck into the ritual storehouse. Then that would mean Keiichi and I were also subject to Oyashiro-sama's curse? Suddenly, a phone rang. The phone was by the front door. The front door was opposite the hag's room, further down the hall. The ringing echoed throughout the long hallway. It sounded so eerie, almost like it was coming from hell. That was when I felt someone behind me. Of course, there was nobody there when I turned around, but there was someone there a moment ago. I didn't know if it was Satoshi-kun. I didn't sense any emotions, so I couldn't tell. I also didn't know how long it had been there. It was as if that somebody was watching me, listen in on their conversation. That was the feeling I got. It couldn't be Satoshi-kun. Satoshi-kun would never be that intimidating or scary. My mind turned all red, like it was suffused with blood.
Have you experienced anything like that? Those footsteps always followed me. They even came to my bedside and looked down at me.
I remembered what Rana Ryugu had said on that rainy day.
You'll be okay if that's true. Oyashiro-sama won't get mad at you.
If Oyashiro-sama wasn't angry, nobody would follow me. So what did this mean? Ever since we snuck into the shrine storage, something has been following me? What is it? Calm down. That's right. Rena wasn't talking about me. She was talking about Satoshi-kun. That's what happened to Satoshi-kun.
Everything he's going through is a sign of Oyashiro-sama's curse.
That's right. That's why he encountered the curse of Oyashiro-sama.
You feel someone is watching from a distance, and it follows you.
A creepy feeling crawled up and spread across my back.
Then, it watches from right behind you. After that, you start hearing an extra footstep.
I swallowed loudly. It's almost as though Rena Ryugu was predicting what would happen to me. Had Rena been talking about Satoshi-kun back then? Or had she actually been talking about me?
But you start hearing it even inside your house after a while. Then, Oyashiro-sama keeps watching you even when you're sleeping in the dark. Right by your side, waiting, silently.
I knew by now that there was no mistake. No matter how I looked at it, she had been talking about me. Yes, me. It had been about me. The curse of Oyashiro-sama. What is the curse of Oyashiro-sama? That was when I actually felt something for real. Someone grabbed my collar. Ah! No voice came out. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was open and close my mouth as if something was stuck in my throat. It was Mion. She looked even colder than how she'd looked in the underground torture room. It only made sense that she'd come out into the hallway to answer the phone. I tried to come up with an excuse. However, the way Mion looked at me was so cold. Even if I really had run into her by accident, I could tell by the look in her eyes that she wouldn't believe me. I felt cold sweat all over my body. I couldn't even move my fingers. Sorry, I apologized. I could have said something to get myself out of the situation, but the apology came out first. But Mion didn't appear to hear me. She walked to the front door, still holding my collar. The phone was still ringing. Is she looking at you like you took her Dino Nuggie plushie? For real, she's angry. She's so mad. A normal person doesn't usually let a phone ring so long at this time of night. The phone call itself didn't seem real to me. Mion picked up the phone. This is Mion. I see. I understand. Please take care of things at your end. Also, please make sure that nobody talks about this. Yes. Goodbye. Mion put down the phone after a short conversation. What did she mean, make sure nobody talks about this? Who called, anyway? Mion put her forehead to mine and spoke to me. Did you hear? Which conversation was she asking me about? Well, she had to have been talking about the one with the hag. If I said yes, what would happen to me? I don't... I don't know what you're talking about. Ah! Mion pulled my collar, pressed her nose on mine, and continued to speak. Just what you heard. The curse of Oyashiro-sama fell upon Tomitake-san and Takano-san. It's really very unfortunate. It was like I was talking to myself in a mirror. But what I was saying in the mirror was ever so cold. Sis, what is the curse of Oyashiro-sama? Tomitake-san killed himself by clawing out his throat. Takano-san was burned to death in an oil drum. Terrible, isn't it? Tomitake-san clawed at his own throat until he died? What? Takano-san was burned to death in an oil drum? What? What? I felt something furry crawl up my spine. I also felt like my stomach was turning upside down. I didn't feel any strength in my legs. If Mion let go of my collar, I'd probably collapse on the spot. Why did they die that way? Don't you know, Shion? I'm asking you because I don't know. I don't know. Don't you see there can only be one reason? Please don't talk as if I already know the answer. What do you mean? My heart was pounding. I felt that my next breath would be so bloody and hot that I'd choke on it. Don't you know? It's because they made Oyashiro-sama angry. The first year, it was the manager of the dam construction site. The second year, it was the traitors to the village. The third year, it was the pacifist. The fourth year, it was the relatives of the traitors. I'd always thought the victims were people who had something to do with the dam conflict. Since I didn't do anything against the village during the dam conflict, I assumed I was safe. I should have known. I should have known everything would be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I knew Oyashiro-sama's anger was the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I knew Oyashiro-sama would get angry if I snuck into the ritual storehouse. But since I wasn't held responsible in any way for the dam conflict, I never thought I would be a victim of the curse. Did I ever think there would be an incident in the 5th year? Did I ever think that I'd be the victim of that 5th year incident? Tomitake-san snuck into the storehouse, and he clawed at his own throat until he died. Takano-san was burned to death in an oil drum. It must be a lie. It couldn't be true. Even if it was forbidden, it was just a space for storing some old torture implements. How could they be killed for just sneaking in there? Especially in such gruesome ways. But I thought about it again and realized that those people were absolutely capable of doing things like that. The main Sonozaki family was capable of it. The Sonozaki family had been pulling the strings behind the series of mysterious deaths. They could do it. The Sonozaki family even kidnapped the grandson of the Minister of Construction during the dam conflict. They could do it. The Sonozaki family made Satoshi-kun disappear completely. They could do it. Mion leaned against me before falling onto the cold hallway floor. She collapsed rather violently. I usually didn't go to sleep with my stun gun. Oh my gosh, she just... Okay, Shion. Okay. But since I was too tired and sleepy to get ready for bed, I still had it on me. I had my stun gun on me. I finally understood. I didn't know who killed them exactly. Whose idea it was or who ordered it. I didn't even know who was actually involved. But Mion and the hag knew everything. Satoshi-kun, now I finally know. Now I know what I need to do. I will settle the score for you, Satoshi-kun. I will avenge you, Satoshi-kun. I won't be killed like you, Satoshi-kun. I walked into the hag's room. She was sitting up to take some medicine. Her back was turned to me. Mion and I are twins. If I acted like her, the hag wouldn't notice the difference. I didn't think she would ever suspected me. I put my stun gun to her neck and pulled the trigger. I heard an indescribable electrical sound and the hag's lights went out. She fell in a twisted position. I didn't know how long it would take a person to regain their freedom of movement after getting knocked out with a stun gun. So I had to restrain them before they woke back up. Are you sure she's not dead? She's an old lady and you put it on her neck. Girl, I think she's dead. I was unbelievably calm. The key to the underground torture room was in the forbidden drawer that only the head of the family can access. Mion had told me about this once. I'd never looked for the drawer before, but I found it exactly where I thought it would be. The key was on a keychain with several of its sisters. Each key had a little plaque on it that said what it was used for. They were all in Mion's handwriting. She was an idiot for being so conscientious, but it sure helped me out. I put the keychain in my pocket and headed to the outdoor storeroom to find a cart. I found a large flashlight there as well. There was a strap on the flashlight, so I could put it on my shoulder. That way, I'd have both hands free to carry Mion and the hag. I loaded Mion and then our grandmother onto the cart and carried them to the underground torture room. I was prepared to use the stun gun again if they woke up while I was working, but it was more powerful than I imagined, and the hag showed no signs of waking. This was the stun gun Kasai specially ordered for me when I told him I wanted a powerful one. I remembered him telling me that it was an illegally modified stun gun and that I should never use it just for fun. Oh my gosh. I used my flashlight to find the light switch. I found it easily and turned it on. All the lights went on in the basement. Although there was now illumination, it was very dim. I moved quickly so as to finish what I needed to do before they woke up. I decided to put Mion in a cell beyond the torture room. The lights in the torture room were so bright that it was like daylight. There was a door there. I was fairly certain the cells were on the other side of that door. The proper key was here. The keys made a tinkling sound. I felt cold air coming in through a gap in the door. There must be a huge opening on the other side. I opened the door and saw nothing but darkness. I felt along the wall to find a light switch. I turned the switch on, and the light bulbs lit up, revealing a huge, rocky cave. It didn't look like a natural cave. It looked more like an air raid shelter. There were several hollow openings with bars across them. Those were the cells. I walked up to the closest cell and checked to see if it was strong enough to confine her. I pushed and pulled on the bars. I rammed against them with all my weight and decided they were perfectly sturdy. This was secure enough to be called a cell. I opened the lock and carried Mion in. I wasn't particularly strong, just average. I'd never thought I was strong enough to carry a whole person. But now I didn't need to pretend to be weak. I could easily lift and drag their bodies. I put Mion in the cell. She seemed to moan a little. I didn't need to check to make sure. The effect of my stun gun was wearing off. I closed the bars and turned the key in the lock. Then I ran to the hag, who must have been starting to wake up too. Fortunately, there was no sign of her regaining consciousness. Maybe the difference in age had something to do with it. I looked for a table to restrain her on. I found a wheelchair with restraints for the hands and feet. I put the hag in it. Of course, she didn't resist, but her dead weight made it seem like she was a huge French doll, but one made of flesh. I put her hands on the armrests, and restrained them at the wrist with the metal rings and hinges. I did the same with her feet. This must have been a wheelchair specially remodeled to restrain a person. Other than the restraints, it was a regular wheelchair. I waited for the hag to wake up. I had so many things I wanted to ask her. I didn't think she'd answer honestly, but I had plenty of tools to make her talk. I was in no rush. When the hag had a concern, relatives took care of the problem. That was how it worked in the Sonozaki family. She was the leader of the family, so all the information they gathered would make its way to her. She must know everything that happened in Hinamizawa, including the curse of Oyashiro-sama. I heard a noise from the cell. Mion must have woken up before the hag did. Speaking of the hag, she didn't seem like she was about to wake up anytime soon, but she was restrained even if she did, so I had no need to fear. I left the hag there and headed for the cell. I'm pretty sure she's dead. Shion, what do you think you're doing? She talked like the successor, but she also sounded frightened. She obviously understood the situation she was in right now. Good morning, Mion. You never thought you'd be in there, huh? As the acting head, I order you, open this up. You don't sound so scary in there. You need to talk more like a leader, don't you think? Though, talking that way will only make you look like a fool. There was nothing funny about it, but I wanted to intimidate Mion. My laughter echoed throughout the cave. It was artificial and meaningless laughter. I heard it over and over as it echoed. It sounded as if I wasn't the only one laughing. I couldn't stand it, so I stopped. Silence filled the air. That silence almost hurt my ears, so I started to speak. Tomitake-san and Takano-san becoming the victims this year. I didn't expect that. What an idea to burn Takano-san to death. But actually, she would be the kind of person who'd prefer to die that way. Maybe she's satisfied, huh? Mion didn't say anything. She just stared at me to see how I'd proceed. What about the way Tomitake-san died? He clawed out his own throat, right? Did you give him a shot of some kind? Or is there a torture device that did that to him? Mion didn't reply. I was smiling boldly, but I became impatient and finally kicked the bars. It made a violent noise. Mion jumped as if she was kicked directly. It's boring to not get any answers. Do you have any idea what'll happen if I get angry? How would I know? Mion finally replied. She was odious, but at the same time sounded pitiful. Hey, Mion, as the successor, why don't you tell me? Let's see. I had just too many things I wanted to ask her. I wanted to ask her about me, about the incident, about the curse, about Satoshi-kun. I didn't even know where to start. Before I asked her about those, I asked her one other thing. You know there's no point in trying to resist, don't you? Mion glared at me silently. Because we were twins, I knew that was just a bluff. We've come this far, so there's no point in me hesitating anymore. You shouldn't expect hesitation or even mercy from me, sis. Mion must have been feeling the cold sweat on her face. Although the light was dim, I could tell she was frightened. Okay, here I go. First, about the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa, also known as the Curse of Oyashiro-sama. What's the meaning of it? Is it to signify the end of the dam conflict? I think so. Mion sounded a little confused, but she answered. I felt satisfaction now that we were communicating. I continued with a smile. You think, huh? Don't you know the details? You know yourself that the successor is simply a messenger for Granny. Yeah, right. But the successor must know everything the current head is thinking, right? Do you really think I believe you're just a messenger? Although I'm always around Granny, I don't always know what she's thinking. It's not like I can understand her all the time. Okay, so you're saying that everything about the curse of Oyashiro-sama is decided by the hag herself, right? I assume she'd talk to the successor about it. When it's something dangerous, Granny decides it on her own. I don't have anything to do with it. But even if she decides by herself, Grandma uses you to take care of various things, doesn't she? And you're telling me you don't know anything. No. She doesn't use me for that. I really don't understand it myself, but it's like I take care of problems on the surface, and someone else takes care of problems on the underside. Who? Who's the one that takes care of these underside problems? I don't know. Haven't you seen anyone? Haven't you overheard a phone conversation? It must be someone who gets in touch with the hag at the same time every year, around the time the curse happens. I don't know. I really don't. Mion shook her head. Okay, let me change the question. Why were Tomitake-san and Takano-san chosen as victims, even though they had nothing to do with the dam conflict? Was it because they snuck into the ritual storehouse? As soon as Mion heard the words ritual storehouse, her expression shifted. The ritual storehouse? Did they intrude on the storehouse of the Furude Shrine? Didn't you know? I thought you already knew. If they really did that, then it was truly stupid of them. Of course something would happen to them. Mion muttered bitterly while shaking her head repeatedly. Mion's reaction made me realize the true meaning of the forbidden storehouse for ritual implements. The ritual storehouse is a sacred building, so nobody can go inside. The curse will fall upon anyone who disobey. Any child would know that rule. However, just because they know about it doesn't mean that they all believe in it. Although they were told that they would be cursed, most of the kids actually enjoyed hearing the stories. They simply didn't believe it was true. However, Mion's reaction told me it absolutely was. If they actually did that, of course something would happen to them. She was saying that if someone snuck into the ritual storehouse, that person should be killed. What you know and what I know aren't matching up anymore. Of course I'm aware I shouldn't just waltz into the storehouse. But to be killed in such a gruesome way for doing it, I never knew that. Did you? That's just because you're ignorant about it, Shion. Well, sorry for being ignorant. Could you please explain it to me? Just like you said, the kids don't really believe in the curse. They assume it's just superstition. But they also know that if an adult found out, they'd be in big trouble. But to the elderly people of Hinamizawa, it's something more serious. Mion explained to me how the elderly people blindly believe in Oyashiro-sama and how sacred the festivals are to them. It's probably something the younger generations would never understand, but they're possessed by a very strong, deeply rooted devotion toward Oyashiro-sama. Mion then went on to tell me about how sinful it was to violate the rule of the ritual storehouse. I just couldn't believe things like that were still going on even in the modern day. I couldn't even reply appropriately. But even if it was unbelievable, I couldn't ignore what I was hearing from my twin sister. I see. But Mion, doesn't the rule say that one victim gets killed by the curse and another has to become a sacrifice? The body of the sacrifice is never to be found. But there are 2 dead bodies this time. What do you think of that? Mion doesn't know that besides Takano-san and Tobitake-san, Keiichi and I also snuck into the ritual storehouse. So I tried to lead her a little. I know. That doesn't make sense. Maybe Takano-san's burned body wasn't supposed to be found. Maybe the intention was for her to vanish. Or... I'm not too sure, but... What? Just say what you're thinking. I won't get mad. Mion hesitated a little first, and then started to speak. Actually, 4 people snuck into the shrine storage. So maybe... Maybe what? Maybe the other 2 will become the sacrifices and get demoned away. So spooky! Mion's words were stuck in my head. If those 2 dead bodies were the result of the curse, then there should be 2 sacrifices to calm Oyashiro-sama's anger. The 4 of us snuck into the shrine storage together. It was a simple equation. Did that mean that Keiichi and I were in danger? I got drunk, fell asleep, and decided to stay overnight. Was that because of the alcohol? Or did someone put a drug in my drink? It's not like me to get drunk and spend the night at the hag's house. I wanted to forget about what happened in that eerie storehouse, so I drank too much. But it really was strange for me to get that drunk. Maybe it was a good thing I woke up in the middle of the night. I could have been the one to wake up in a cell. Sometimes it's hard to recognize danger when you avoid it accidentally. A part of me wanted to just laugh at the idea, but another part felt frightened that I was so close to being in Mion's position. If my thinking was correct, I wonder how Keiichi Mayabata was doing right now. I didn't see him in any of the cells, but that didn't guarantee his safety. Takano-san and Tobitake-san had been executed. There was a possibility that Keiichi could already be dead. But just like what happened to Satoshi-kun, it might only happen after a few days. When the sun rose, I was going to pretend to be Mion and head to her school. I was going to check if Keiichi Mayabata was safe. If he had already disappeared, the enemy would come after me next. I'd have to be a decoy for myself. But if he was still safe, I'd need to keep my eyes on him. I was sure the enemy would come after that scatterbrain. If I became Mion, Shion would disappear. The enemy would think that Shion had already been demoned away, and they'd concentrate on Keiichi. If nothing happened to Keiichi, that would also be fine. It'd prove that nothing would happen to me either. The hag was still sleeping in the wheelchair. I was going to interrogate her. But actually, I wasn't expecting to learn that much. The woman who was also known as Empress Sonozaki probably wouldn't say a thing even if her fingers were cut off. Mion, her successor, was the complete opposite. She spoke readily but didn't know too much about anything. Mion had said she was only a messenger, and that someone else was taking care of the problems on the underside. It was possible Mion had grown to be a good liar, and that she tried to deceive me with a straight face. But at the same time, I could see the hag not letting Mion get involved in the underside of the village. If I were her, I wouldn't have used Mion for that either. Unlike me, Mion was a nice person. While there were only ones and zeros in the world, she believed that there were numbers with decimal points. In other words, she could never be cruel. If the hag thought the same way as I do, it was very possible. The one who took care of the problems on the underside, X, was the one who actually governed the curse of Oyashiro-sama. If the hag became concerned about something, X would deal with it, either directly or indirectly. Or maybe the hag and X would discuss the details first. But did X really exist? If he did, his place here in the village hierarchy was a lot more important than that of the successor. Unlike Mion, who was too nice, he was discreet, cruel, and cunning. Furthermore, he was extremely close to the hag. Someone who would have a lot of contact with her just before it was time for the curse. Because of the way Tomitake-san died, it could be someone who regularly dealt with unusual drugs. He could be a member of a medical institution. The director of the Irie Clinic. Irie. In this isolated village, Irie was famous for opening such a beautiful clinic, and for working so hard for the villagers' sake. The villagers liked his mature personality and really respected him. Mature? This dude? For real? There's nothing scarier than a doctor who's also a murderer. If Irie was the person behind the curse, all the mysterious deaths could be explained. However, there was only a slim chance of Irie being X. The main reason being that the hag wouldn't trust him. Like many of the elderly, the hag doesn't like young people. I knew she'd never trust him because of his age. Furthermore, she had openly criticized his behavior among the relatives once. Although Irie was famous, he was an outsider after all. He wasn't born here. He tried to maintain a good relationship with the villagers as the director of the clinic, but that was just on the surface. I couldn't even imagine the hag telling him about her worries or about the village's underside. If she was as suspicious of others as I was, then she'd only gather trustworthy people to deal with that underside. The first people that came to my mind were the leaders of the three families. Leaving Rika-chama out, the head of the Kimiyoshi family was a strong possibility. He was the only one who could advise Empress Sonozaki. They were of similar age, and everyone knew that they were very close outside the family councils. Furthermore, as the mayor, he often went to the Sonozaki house just before Watanagashi to discuss festival preparations. I could easily picture them talking privately. The one who executed the curse of Oyashiro-sama. The one who murdered Takano-san and Tomitake-san. The mastermind behind the series of mysterious deaths that had been going for the past 5 years. Was he coming after me? Did he get to Satoshi-kun? When I thought about Satoshi-kun, I felt elevated. I was fearful of possibly being this year's victim until just a moment ago. I was scared that X was after me. But when I thought about it, I realized. Whoever it was, this person had gotten Satoshi-kun. I'd looked so hard, but I couldn't find him. I'd almost forgotten about this enemy. For better or for worse, he was going to appear before me again. No matter how hard I'd tried, I couldn't find that enemy. But now, he was trying to find me. That was it. I wasn't only being chased. I was chasing too. When I realized all this, I was no longer afraid of dying to the 5th year's curse. It had become a game. I wasn't only being threatened. I was threatening too. Now was the time to settle the score for Satoshi-kun. Now was the time to awaken passions that had grown weak over the past year. I could feel righteous indignation and courage flare up within me. The only emotion that can defeat fear is anger. When my anger completely overtook my fear, I felt as if I were reborn. Oh boy, Demon Shion coming through! Why don't you wake up, Empress of Hags? I kicked her wheelchair rather violently. But that didn't wake her up either. Are you just pretending to be asleep? I grabbed her hair and pulled her head up. But even then, the hag still stayed silent with a straight face. Then, I noticed something. I looked for an appropriate torture device. They were all large scale, none of them being particularly handy. That's when I saw a cigarette lighter on a cushion in the tatami room. One of the relatives must have left it there. I lit the lighter. A huge flame appeared. I turned the lighter off and went back to the hag with it. Can you see it? Can't you see it? This is a cigarette lighter somebody left behind. I lit it in front of her eyes. I'm going to burn your nose now. You don't want that, do you? I wouldn't want it. So why don't you quit pretending to be asleep? There was still no response. I put the flame right under her nose without hesitation. The tip of the flame touched the tip of her nose. The flame must have burned her nose hair. It smelled terrible. I was already certain, but I continued anyway. I brought the flame closer to her eye. Her eyelid didn't move one bit. The flame burned her eyelashes, making it smell awful again. I turned the lighter off and then felt her throat and wrist. I didn't feel any warmth. I didn't feel a pulse either. Did she die from the stun gun? There was no way she could pretend to be asleep while being burned. Even if she could endure the pain, anyone would reflexively move their eyelids if a flame came close to their eyes. But she didn't. I turned the sink water on and aimed the end of the hose at the hag's face. The water pressure wasn't too high, but by squeezing the tip of the hose, I could make it squirt out. The water hit the hag in the face, but there was still no reaction. Crap. You've got to be kidding me! She's dead. The one who was at the center of everything is dead now. I knew she wouldn't talk, but I didn't expect her to end up dead. I'd never even thought of killing her. I walked around the room restlessly. I didn't feel guilty, but instead felt frustrated with what I'd done. Come on, I need to calm down. What do I need to be afraid of? Calm down and stay cool. Calm down. Stay cool. I could feel my brain starting to calm down, and my emotions cooling down with it. She was my true enemy. It was just that I killed her before confronting her about it. Sooner or later, I would have killed her anyway. She wouldn't have said anything in the first place, so there really wasn't a reason why I should have let her live. I didn't realize that until now, and that was why I got frustrated. My revenge for Satoshi-kun started with the unexpected death of my grandmother. It was such a strange feeling, like I was wearing sopping wet clothes. I replaced that feeling with anger. I couldn't forgive her. I couldn't forgive the hag for abusing the Hojo family, including Satoshi-kun, for so many years. She cornered him psychologically as well as physically. She didn't deserve an easy death from a stun gun. I picked up a whip that was hanging on a wall. The whip was designed to make sure the person on the receiving end got seriously injured. This music is wild. I know, Shion crazy. I swung it up, and then down. The sound reminded me of when I was a child hitting things with the jump rope I pretended was a whip. But unlike then, I'd made a purple mark on the hag's face, and reddish-black blood started oozing out. I swung it up and then down again. This time, the whip hits her in the head. Her hair flew in the air. I saw a bunch of her hair on the tip of the whip. At the end of the bunch of hair, there was a piece of her skin. Seemed the whip had ripped a part of her scalp off. I continued to hit her with the whip. I didn't bother removing the hair beforehand. The tip of the whip was divided into many points, with each point having a fishhook on the end. Those hooks, added to the speed of the whip, not only scratched the victim but tore their skin as well. The hag's hair was all messed up and her face was getting bloody. She'd started to look like a real demon. I stopped the whipping, not because my arm was tired, but because I couldn't stand the feeling of her hair on the tip touching me every time I swung the whip. I threw the whip at the hag. Breathing heavily, I realized I was covered in her hair. It almost felt like thousands of maggots crawling all over me. I brushed it off violently. Ha! You deserve this, you demon hag. I put my hands on my knees and exhaled roughly. Oh god, yeah, no, she's crazy. And not in a good way. It was then that I noticed it. I perked up and turned around. There it is. The person who had been watching me since I snuck into the shrine storage. I sensed this person sitting in the tatami room. It enjoyed watching me torture my grandmother. An overwhelming emotion started to swallow me up. I tried desperately not to feel it. How long have you been there? You should have said something. It was just there. Just like Satoshi-kun. It was just there. It was extremely uncomfortable to have it just be there. I see. Rena told me. Are you Oyashiro-sama? I smiled boldly. And yet, I could feel my body shivering. You can't fool me. Are you saying that you're Oyashiro-sama? And that the curse of Oyashiro-sama really does exist? Come on! Who would believe something like that? Huh? It was just my imagination. It couldn't have been the curse of Oyashiro-sama. The curse couldn't be real. Everything was done by humans. They made everything look like it was a curse. Well, I don't care if you saw what I did. I won't charge you for it. But if you're thinking about interfering, I won't hold back, you know? No matter what I said, nothing happened. It was like trying to communicate with an insect. I felt like I was staring at a spider in the middle of its web, and the spider was staring back. I turned to the hag in the wheelchair. I couldn't leave her body here forever. If I don't need to make her death known, then it should be quick, and it's best if a body doesn't exist. Not even in this secret underground torture room. Phew. I exhaled to try and calm myself down. Oh, I remember now. When I was a little girl, Kasai used to love making me feel scared. He often told me scary stories about various horrible things. I recalled a story about the secret torture room of the Sonozaki family. According to the story, there was a well in the torture room for dumping bodies in. There was a pile of tortured corpses at the bottom of the well, and resentful moans could be heard echoing from there. About halfway down the well, there was a different tunnel, which was a secret passage leading to the distant mountains. That bit was from Mion's telling of the story. It was probably an amalgamation of tellings from different relatives. The room was supposed to be a huge secret, but everyone got loose lips at the chance to have fun scaring the young successor. Mion, do you remember one of our relatives talking about a hidden well a long time ago? Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. There's supposed to be a hidden well somewhere in this underground torture room, and it's connected to a secret passage. Did you hear some noise earlier? That was me whipping the hag. Mion didn't reply, but I saw her bite her lip. Don't worry, I won't whip you. But if you don't cooperate, I might punish her some more. Next time I won't use a whip. Down at the end. Do you see a cell in the darkness? It's in there. Mion pointed weakly. I walked down to where her finger indicated. A light bulb lit up the cell. It was a lot smaller than the one Mion was in. It was very shallow, and I didn't even need to open the door to see how tiny it was. Of course there's no well in there. I became angry, assuming that she lied to me. But after considering it, I didn't actually think she would at this point. I opened the door and walked in. I noticed something immediately. There was an opening right in the middle of the cell. This opening was naturally disguised. The way the rocks and the shadows were positioned perfectly hid the well. The tip of the rock inside of the cell concealed the entrance. Unless you went in, you'd never notice. But it was such a shallow cell that nobody would even think of going in. Besides, the bars allow you to see inside the well enough. The cell is not even a few meters deep, so it would only take a glance to see everything. Nobody would think of unlocking the door and walking in. But walking in was the only way anyone could find the well. Furthermore, there were so many cells in this huge cave. Who'd think that one of them was hiding a secret well? The inside of the well was dark. I couldn't see anything. But every little noise I made produced echoes. I could tell this was a very deep well. I brought a flashlight from the torture room and shone it down the well. It almost looked more like a vertical tunnel. Obviously a man-made one at that. There were wedges on the wall, like a ladder, and they looked as if they were inviting me to descend. It's kind of ironic that the secret escape route from an underground torture room ended up being a well that takes you even further down. You had no way of knowing whether it would take you to freedom or to hell. Furthermore, there were the tortured bodies of past victims at the bottom. Who would be able to go down this well without hesitation? Nobody in their right mind could go down this well to look for a secret tunnel, hearing the voices of the dead all the while. Listen, okay, if there are bodies from, victims from years ago, surely they're all decomposed by now. They can't still be, perfectly fine dead bodies just at the bottom. That's crazy. Have you ever gone down that well, Mion? I've never even wanted to. I feel the same way. Why would I go down the well where they tossed the victims of the torture room? I went back to the torture room and then returned to the cave, pushing the wheelchair containing the hag. Mion screamed. Shion, are you going to push Granny down the well? No, I'm not. I'm just dumping her body. She's dead. Rest assured, I didn't torture her to death. It was probably the stun gun. Maybe her heart failed. I could just leave her body here, but I don't want it to rot, you know? How could you? Hey, do you want to take care of her even now that she's dead? Maybe you could use chopsticks to pick maggots off her body. Huh? Mion covered her ears and shook her head. Everything I said seemed to bother Mion. Her own life wasn't guaranteed at this point. Shion, why did you do this? Let's see. Why do you think? Nobody said anything for a while, but the silence was soon broken. Satoshi? Is this revenge? I don't know if it was really revenge, since it happened so quickly. I'm sure she died without even feeling a thing. Hey, Mion. Now that I think about it, I did have a reason to kill Grandma. Do you know what it was? It wasn't just because she killed Satoshi-kun. It's because she lied. I slapped the hag's head. You said it too. You told me that if I ripped out my nails, she would forgive everyone. That's why I ripped out 3 of my nails. I did what you told me to, right? But she didn't keep her promise. She made Satoshi-kun disappear. Why? What was that for? I continued to slap the hag's head. Her blood was all over my hand by then, and it felt gross. I tried to wipe it off on her clothes, but then her hair got on my hand. I ran to the sink in the torture room and washed my hands with a brush. When I was done, I went back to Mion's cell. After Satoshi-kun disappeared, you came over and told me. You said the relationship between me and Satoshi-kun was forgiven. You also said that the Sonozaki main house had nothing to do with Satoshi-kun's disappearance. Yeah, I You lied. 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 My shouts echoed throughout the cave. I was breathing heavily. I felt like I used up all of the air in my lungs. I believe you don't know anything. You aren't even sure if the old lady actually trusted you. But I don't know if she forgave Satoshi-kun because of what I did. She wouldn't have told you the truth. The hag didn't keep her promise. She said she'd forgive everyone, but she lied. She didn't forgive. She didn't forgive Satoshi-kun. Liar, 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 liar! Dang it, dang it! Give me back Satoshi-kun! I want him back! I want him, I want him, I want him, I want him! I kicked the hag's leg repeatedly. Each time I kicked, the wheelchair made a squeaky noise. I ran out of breath and kneeled down. Mion was still covering her ears and was now shaking. There were tears in her eyes. Sorry to scare you. Sorry about that. If you really don't know, I won't torment you. Don't worry. But if you were ever lying to me, well, you'll have to accept whatever comes your way. You know what I mean? My suspicions are confirmed. Shion is indeed the evil one here. Mion has a demon my butt. It's Shion. It's Shion. Notebook page 183. I wasn't planning to kill the hag so quickly. I was going to kill her anyway, but it was too soon. People would normally assume that the Sonozaki family operates as a hierarchy, but that's not true. It's actually more like a system of government. Several ministries stem from the main family, and each forms a hierarchy of its own. These ministries don't communicate with one another. The people who belong to a given ministry don't know what other ministries are doing. That way, the Sonozaki family's dealings are kept perfectly secret. Of course, the most important people in the family govern several ministries. They know, of course, about their own ministries. And they know a little bit about the ministries their relatives run. But none of them know everything. There are ministries that work in the open. There are ministries that work unseen. And there are some smaller ones that Oryo runs herself. Mion seems to know about most of them, but she doesn't necessarily know them all. In fact, she didn't know about the curse. Considering that, the fact that the hag died before I could interrogate her is a huge loss. Notebook page 185. The head of the Kimiyoshi family was the one who called the main house most often after the 5th year's curse. My father called the second most. My parents were still high on the hierarchy, but the stir caused by my mother's disownment still hung over us, so we got treated as outcasts. So the fact that my father received so many calls proved how much the hag valued us despite the distance at which we were kept, demonstrating her own two-faced respect for both sides of the coin. My father seems to be in charge of the Intelligence Bureau. He reported police information, gossip, and rumors going around in the Yakuza business to the hag. He silences, stirs, and distorts that information at her request. By the way, my servant Kasai is an old friend of my father's. That must be why Kasai knows many things. But I don't know if my father is involved in the curse's execution. My assumption is that although he gathered information on the police investigation about the case, he wasn't involved in the execution itself. The fact that my father and the hag have this close connection isn't widely known. People know that she uses his information network, but they don't look very far beyond that. In the same way, it's possible that a curse execution team exists under the hag's direct control. People just aren't aware of it. That's crazy. Shion has definitely gone insane, and good for her. But, don't murder.